Good morning, everyone. I am honored to be with you today. My greetings and special thanks to our leadership under our school's Division Superintendent Dr. Miguel Mac D. Apusin, CESO 5, and to my colleague, Ms. Laila L. Pamatian, also a Senior Education Program Specialist of the Human Resource Development, for this invitation. My topic is about the Department of Education Manual of Styles, or the DepEd Manual of Style, or in short, the DMOS. So the presentation objectives is that at the end of this PowerPoint presentation, we should be able to A. Familiarize with the different mechanics in writing, B. Recognize preferred spelling and vocabulary for effective writing, C. Observe DepEd House style in all written communications and publications, D. Write letters, memoranda, orders, advisories following the prescribed format. The contents of this presentation is the abbreviations, capitalization, currencies and exchange rates, dates, formatting. Under the formatting, you have the headings, page numbers, tables, and then we have language usage, numbers, word class, punctuation, references, spelling, proofreaders marks, language usage, expressions used in ordinary conversation, parts of words often confused, eliminating redundancy, and official issuances. So why did we in DepEd come up with the DMOS? So this 2018 edition of the DMOS is largely based on the 17th edition of the Chicago Manual of Style. Since 1906, the Chicago Manual of Style has been the prescribed manual for most publishing institutions that use American English. The DMOS is intended for use in the Department of Education to standardize style and usage. While the manual prescribes usage based on the Chicago Manual of Style, there are some exceptions, specifically those that pertain only to the department. These unique styles are called DepEd House Style. The rationale for using this unique house style include common usage within the department or unique decisions made for practical purposes. There are 4 objectives of the DMOS. 1. It shall serve as a guide for DepEd officials to write clear and concise materials or documents for communication and publication. So here you can see this concerns the division office. But of course, we share this to you for you to understand the issuances that we are releasing. No? The format, the template, the concept behind on why the issuances of the division office look like that. Number 2, it shall be used as a reference for formatting and styling of documents and materials to ensure clarity, completeness of information, conciseness, and consistency. I just would like to stress the note here on the 4 C's, the clarity, completeness of information, conciseness, and consistency. So that you also, when you, in your respective districts, in your respective schools, when you produce issuances, it will contain these 4 important elements. Number 3, it shall facilitate the process, mechanisms, and procedures in formulating policies to ensure easy to understand DepEd issuances. So the real goal here is, let's go back to that term again, no? Practicality and simplicity. Okay. Number 3, it shall facilitate the process, mechanisms, and procedures in formulating policies to ensure easy to understand DepEd issuances. Number 4, it shall strengthen the communication channels of field offices and facilitate the flow of information. We understand that here in DepEd, no? The term bureaucracy, and that's one of the reasons behind the MOS. So the principles of effective business writing, you have the 4 C's plus another 3, so you have 7. Let's go back and discuss each one by one. Clarity, keep it clear and simple. Number 2, conciseness, keep it short, brief and direct to the point. Number 3, completeness. Provide complete and necessary information. Number 4, concreteness. Avoid vague terms and languages. Number 5, consistency. Ensure that documents are consistent in spelling, grammar, punctuation, hyphenation, capitalization, typeface, whether it's bold, italic, underlined, among others, and abbreviation. What does it mean? It means that the way you use the term in the first sentence or the first paragraph is the way you use in the entirety of your issuance. Number 6, coherence. Follow a logical sequence in the discourse. Number 7, courtesy. Always build goodwill in communication. Okay, in short, avoid sentences or maybe connotations that are rude, impolite, no? We avoid these things in DepEd. Let's go now to the abbreviations. So, number 1, if an abbreviation or acronym appears 2 or more times in a document, spell it out at first mention in documents, issuances, and press releases. Include the abbreviation and acronym in parentheses after the full form or spelled out term, then use the abbreviation or acronym in succeeding paragraphs. We have here an example. The Department of Education, open close parentheses, DepEd, shall continue to provide school-based management, close open parentheses, SBM, through the grants to public schools. To augment the school's funds, DepEd School Effectiveness Division shall manage the allocation of SBM grants based on the SBM guidelines on availment, release, utilization, and liquidation. So note there that at first, it used Department of Education spelled out. Then in the later sentences, it just used DepEd as an abbreviation. And then the acronym SBM was used later, but first it was spelled out as school-based management. Acronyms are set in all capital letters with no periods in between letters. If a term is mentioned only once, use the spelled out form. For abbreviations and names of organizations, number 3, when the full form or spelled out term is less known than its abbreviation, use the acronym or abbreviation of the organization. List the abbreviation or acronym on the document's list of abbreviations. We have here example, no? The CIMEO, ASEAN, UN, UNICEF, and UNESCO. So, when you say enclosed is a copy of DepEd DSWD DILG DOH Joint Memorandum Circular Number 1 dated 6 May 2013. 4. If unsure or unfamiliar with the acronym and to ensure that the acronyms are set correctly, check online. So, for example, we do not know what PEACE border means. But later when we research it online, it stands for Poverty Eradication and Alleviation Certificates Bond. UNICEF, which stands for United Nations Children's Emergency Fund. Let's go now to articles and abbreviations. If the acronym is read as a word, avoid using an article before it. If the abbreviation is read as a series of letters, use an article before it. So, example, DepEd has issued new instructions for implementation. NEDA is an agency that plays a big role in disaster risk reduction. The DSWD has been building its capacities in responding to disasters. The safety of the school children during disasters is one of the reasons why we have the SDRRMC. Capitalization of abbreviations. Write acronyms in capital letters. Write abbreviations in initial, uppercase, and lowercase as relevant. In their spelled out forms, capitalize only the first letter of proper nouns. Example, World Health Organization, or close open parentheses, WHO. So all the the capitalized letter are only the WH and O. Okay. Philippine Red Cross, PRC, Assistant Secretary, ASEC, Undersecretary, USEC. So that's how it's written. Let's go now to countries. Abbreviating countries. Spell out country names in texts. Abbreviate country names in tables and lists. So if you write or jot down the country names in tables and lists, you can abbreviate them. No, for example, Philippines, you can just write PHL. They do that. No, you see that when you go to airport, for example, looking for your flight list. In certain technical applications, it may be advisable to use either the 2-letter or 3-letter standard abbreviations based on the English names or countries. Check the International Organization for Standardization or ISO standard for 2-letter abbreviation and the UN standard for 3-letter abbreviation for countries at. So this is the reference. Now if you would like to check out for yourself, http://www.word@last.com/aatlas/citywidecodes.htm. So you have examples there, no? Philippines is just acronymed as PHL, Germany, GER, France, FR, Israel, IS. Notes, PHL and PH for Philippines. So PHL/PH is the ISO initials for the Philippines. RP is not used anymore to avoid ambiguity. RP, which before stood for Republic of the Philippines. DFA Department Order Number 16-10 dated October 20, 2010 mandates all DFA offices, consulates general, and for permanent missions to use PHL and PH. United States or US. In running text, spell out United States as a noun. Reserve US for the adjective form only. Example, US dollars. US contribution to environment preservation. So, but in this last example, you can see the two countries spelled out. The Philippines' involvement in the United States. Let's go now to educational degrees. Use the abbreviated form of degrees after a person's name without periods. For example, R. Santos, EDD, PhD. So you see that in our Issuances, no? When we mention the name of our school's division superintendent, after the name Miguel Mac D. Apusin, EDD, you do not see any more comma before the between the Apusin and the EDD. No, it's just straight the last name, then EDD, and then the comma says of 4. So that's what happened. Number 9, in texts, use the standard rule for abbreviations. Example, the university will offer courses leading to a Master of Arts or MA degree in literature. What about footnotes? Use the abbreviated form of a term in the footnote if previously defined in the text. If a term is abbreviated for the first time in a footnote, spell it out first and provide the abbreviation in parentheses. Use the abbreviated form thereafter in both footnotes and texts. Number 11, spell out the names of national governments. So you have example here, Government of the Philippines, not GOP. So you have to spell out. Let's go to headings and titles. Abbreviating titles before names. So abbreviate civil or military titles preceding a full name. Spell out these titles if preceding a surname alone. In salutations, abbreviated form is allowed. For example, Representative Cruz, you just use Rep. Jose Cruz Jr. Then Senator Santos, you just use Sen. Maria Santos. And then Assistant Secretary De La Cruz, you just use ASEC, then De La Cruz. Okay, so what's the difference? In the abbreviated title, we indicate the full name. But if we spell out the title, we could just use the surname only. Social titles. Abbreviate social titles whether preceding the full name or the surname. So social titles such as Miss, Mr., Mrs., Doctor. So If it is placed before the surname, we can abbreviate it. But if it's succeeding the surname or in the succeeding usage, it's spelled out. 14. Omit these titles when an academic degree or professional designation follows a name. For example, you have Juan Santos MD. So, do not use Dr. Juan Santos MD because that's redundant. By redundant, we mean repetition. No? You already addressed Juan Santos as doctor at the preceding, then at succeeding, you place MD pa. So, no need. No? Just use either but not both. If you use Dr. Juan Santos, don't put MD anymore at the last part. Or you could just omit the doctor part and just indicate Juan Santos MD. 15. Reverend and Honorable. Use Reverend and Honorable before a full name when quote unquote the does not precede the title. Spell out the titles when used with quote unquote the. For DepEd use Honorable or Hon for the members of the executive committee. So example, you have the Reverend Ray Reyes. The Reverend there is abbreviated compared to the Reverend Ray Reyes where you spell out the word Reverend. The same goes with Honorable Mary Season or the Honorable Mary Season as shown in the script. Issuances are spelled out at first mention and are abbreviated thereafter. Republic Acts, administrative orders, executive orders, and other legislation should be abbreviated as RA, AO, EO, respectively, and others without the periods in between letters. So, hindi na nilalagyan ng period. Except for RAs, the year series should be included. At first mention, capitalize using title case with the abbreviated word, quote-unquote, NO. But the S, which stands for series, should be in lowercase. So, example, at first mention, spell out the Republic Act, the number. Then you have the 10533, comma, S for series. But shortened S lang, no? Period, then 2013. For the succeeding citation, the abbreviation should be used and should be in all capitals. The word, quote-unquote, number or NO should no longer be included. So, nawala yung NO, no? What happened there in the example is, for the succeeding citation, we just write it as RA 10533 S 2013 or DO 8S period 2013. The quote-unquote NO was dropped. Non-English terms. At first appearance, spell out the English translation of abbreviated non-English terms first, followed by the non-English abbreviation in parentheses. So, for example, Commission on the Filipino Language. Close open parentheses KWF. Because that is the non-English term, the kagawaran ng wikang Filipino. Plurals. Add lowercase quote-unquote s to indicate a plural abbreviation. Do not place an apostrophe before the s. So, for example, School Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plans. Because this is a plural, in plural form, you add the small s on the all caps of the SDRRMP. Possessive. Add an apostrophe before the s to indicate a possessive form. Do not add apostrophe s to the abbreviated or the abbreviation or acronym. For example, Department of Education's policies. So, the close open parenthesis there, DepEd, has no apostrophe s. Punctuation. Omit the period when abbreviating educational degrees. names of countries and other geographic locations, government ministries and agencies, institutions, or organizations. For example, before we put PH period then D, but now we could not see any more period there. So PhD, DepEd, MA, and NEDA, USA, no periods. Tables. List alphabetically and define any abbreviation used in tables. Place the definitions below the table. Left align text in first column. Right align all numbers. So in this particular example, you have there the column for country using the 3-letter acronym. Then the column for the number of students in school A, enrollment rate. But under the table, you have the legend, no? So what does FRA means? That stands for France, IND for India, PHL for Philippines, USA for United States. Capitalization. Use a capital letter to begin proper nouns, sentences, headings, some abbreviations, and acronyms, and the important words in composition titles. Capitalize the initial letter of common nouns such as party, river, and street when they are an integral part of the full name of a place or thing. Example, Akron River, Mabini Street, New York City. Capitalize the initial letter of proper names of nationalities, peoples, races, tribes, and so on. Example, Filipinos, Americans, Indians, Arabs, Africans. Capitalize initial letters of specific constitutions. Use lowercase c for constitution if the constitution is used in a generic sense. Example, Philippine Constitution. So the initial letters are in capital letter. A constitution is a set of principles that a country abides by. So here, it's generic, so the constitution is in small letter. Let's go now to educational degrees and grades. Use lowercase initial letter for degrees and fellowship in text. Capitalize all letters and abbreviate without a period when used after a person's name. Example, she has a master's degree in Philippine Studies. Juan de la Cruz, MD. For grade levels, capitalize initial letter. Example, she was enrolled in kindergarten. The pupil was accelerated from grade 4 to grade 6. Capitalize the initial letter of ethnic and national groups. Example, Mangyan, Ilocano, or Ilocano, using the interchanging C with K. Use initial capital letters for government, for formal and full names of the governments. When used in generic sense, use initial lowercase letters for government. For example, Government of the Philippines. Since we are referring to a particular government, the word government and the name Philippines has its initial letter in capital letter. The government should provide basic social services. So this is a generic use of government, the word government, so it is in small letter. Let's go now to meetings, conferences, and fora, or the plural of forum is fora. Capitalize initial letters of actual names of meetings, conferences, and forums. When used in a generic sense, use lowercase initial letters. Example, we invite you to Ugnayan. So the word Ugnayan there has its initial letter in capital letter. A national conference on resilience. So national conference on resilience, the first letters were in capital letters. Our organization will be conducting a national conference on resilience. Note there that when you use the word a to a national conference, the use is generic. So it's in small letters. What about ministries, departments, and other government bodies? Capitalize initial letters of full names of national ministries and departments and other permanent bodies, but lowercase for generic references. When referring to the Department of Education as the department, capitalize D. Okay? So, the keyword there is the word the or a. Pag sinabing a department, small d. But when you use the department, so the word department should start with a capital letter. Example, the Department of Education has drafted its own annual plan. The department will finalize its plan by March. Each department is responsible for drafting an annual plan. The last example there, use the word department in generic terms. Committees. At first reference, spell out and capitalize initial letter of a committee's full name. Place abbreviated form in parentheses after the spelled out form. Lowercase committee when it stands alone. Example, the Office Screening Committee, close open parentheses OSC, ranked the applicants. The committee submitted the ranking of applicants to the Personal Selection Board. Excuse the period there. There's no period. Supposedly no period there. Capitalize initial letters of full names of organizations, companies, and institutions. No comma before the INC or Incorporated and LTD or Limited. Example, National Organization of Professional Teachers Incorporated. So there's no comma that you could find there. Before, we put comma before the INC, right? But now, no comma. Capitalize initial letters of actual names of plans, policies, treaties, acts, programs, sub-projects, and similar documents or agreements. Lowercase initial letters when used in a generic sense or when their short form is used except for department issuances. Example, order, memorandum. Use lowercase initial letters for bills not yet approved. We have examples here. K-12 Basic Education Program. The Gawad Siklab search for outstanding student government is ongoing. The search is open to all student bodies nationwide. The DepEd order was issued yesterday. The order was about the regulations on issuance. Let's go now to titles. Capitalize initial letters for civil, military, religious, and professional titles when these immediately precede a personal name. Lowercase when following a name or used in place of a name. Example, President Juan J. de los Santos, the President. So note that the word President there is in small letter. Governor Mariano de la Cruz, the Governor. The same. Education Department Secretary Maria Santos, the Secretary. Once a title has been given, it need not be repeated each time a person's name is mentioned. For example, Cecilia Reyes, Senator of the Philippines. Senator Reyes or Reyes. So we do not repeat anymore the full name, or we just shorthand the full or the entire noun. In promotional or ceremonial contexts, such as a displayed list of donors in a book or a list of corporate officers in an annual report, titles are usually capitalized even when following a personal name. Exceptions may be allowed for reasons of courtesy or diplomacy. For example, Josefina Ramos, Secretary of Education. Because we are showing courtesy to the person, we use the capital letter. So that's just the sense of the principle behind. Lowercase titles when used alone or when set off descriptively from a name by commas, often after a name. When applicable, capitalize only the names of departments, divisions, and other groups. For reasons of diplomacy and courtesy, exception to this rule is applicable. So let's take a look at the examples. Maria Santos, Education Department Secretary. Maria Santos, Secretary of the Department of Education. Please excuse the missing letter there. For currencies and exchange rates. Peso. For consistency with new publications, use P instead of PHP when referring to amounts and figures of money. Do not place a space between the currency and the number. So the example there is the 500 pesos and the 10,000 pesos. So there is no more the HP there for PHP. Only the letter P. Dollar. For instances where dollars refer to other non-US currencies in a single word, they should be specifically expressed. For formal usage, the ISO's 3-letter codes should be used. Please refer to this link, https://www.iso.org/iso-4217-currency-codes.html. So we have examples here. Canadian dollar. So you write CAD, 1,900 pesos. Singaporean dollar, SGD, 525. US dollar, USD, 818. Dates. Systems of chronology. The Chicago Manual of Style recommends full capitals without periods, in keeping with the general guidelines. For example, AD for Anno Domini, or meaning in the year of our Lord. So we write AD 2020. BC for before Christ, we write 4000 BC. For time of day, use numerals with zeros for even hours for exact times. Chicago Manual of Style recommends lowercase for AM and PM. Example, 11 o'clock AM. AM meaning ante-meridium or before noon. 12 o'clock noon, meridium noon, which is rarely used because if it's 12:01, that's no longer noon, that's already PM. 1 o'clock PM, post-meridium, afternoon. The abbreviations AM and PM should not be used with morning, afternoon, evening, night, or o'clock. Spelled out time is preferred. Example, 10:30 AM or 10:30 in the morning. If you spell out the number, you spell out also the abbreviation. 11 o'clock PM or 11 o'clock at night. This is for the purpose of consistency. Date format. Write month, day, comma, and then year. Example, December 25, 2017. Except for correspondence and DepEd issuances, abbreviate January, February, March, April, July, August, September, October, November, December, etc. when used with a specific date. Spell out the names of months when using a month alone or with a year alone. For example, April is abbreviated APR period 27, 2017. So no comma after the month. Decades. Do not use an apostrophe before S to signify decades. For example, 1900s, 1980s. This is informal form. So the informal form is you drop the 19, you just replace it with the apostrophe, 80s, 90s. Let's go now to formatting. The first part is annexes. Let's go to abbreviations. For acronyms and abbreviations used 2 times or more in an annex, spell out the term on first mention, then provide the abbreviation in parentheses after the word. Use the abbreviation form thereafter. Footnotes. Restart footnote numbering of each annex to 1. Do not continue numbering from the main text. Each appendix footnote numbering should start with 1. Page numbering. Restart page numbering of annexes to 1. So we're referring here to annexes or the attachments to your to our correspondence. They should not be continued from the original text or the original issuance. If it's an annex, it should always start with 1. Tables. Cite all tables in the text. Place each table near the end of the paragraph in which it is first cited, if possible. Abbreviations in tables. Abbreviations may be used in a table, but define each one in an alphabetical list below the table. Use a smaller font for the abbreviations list. We did it already earlier, no? Here. So we use that there. You have the table, and under the table you have the legend. Let's go now to column titles. Center align column titles. And then the body, decimal align or right align numbers in a table. Be consistent with the number of decimal places. For text tables, left align text. Okay, it's the same as the principle of adding numbers, because you want the ones, the tens, the hundreds, and the thousands aligned together so we could process them appropriately, whether it's multiplication or addition, subtraction, whatever. Labeling. If a document has only one table, use only the title. If it has two or more tables, number them with Arabic numerals in the order in which they appear in the text. Provide a short table title. Place the title after the table number and center the table number at the title across the columns. Place the table number and title outside the table. Indicate the unit of measurement used in the table. Place this below the table title. For large tables, consider placing large tables more than one page as annexes. So, separate annex. Maybe if the previous were under Annex A, the large table will be in Annex B. Notes and explanatory material. Tables should be able to stand alone. Place all explanatory materials immediately below the table, including abbreviations, footnotes, and sources. I indicated it earlier as legend. No, so whatever abbreviations we use there, whatever seemingly vague terms we used in the table, there should be an explanation below the table or immediately under the table. Numbering. When numbering in a table, use a period after every number. Roman numerals could also be used. Avoid using the closing parentheses. Okay, so as you see in the example, preferred is the period instead of closing parentheses. Rounding. Round numbers to up to 2 decimal places. Be consistent with the number of decimal places used within a table. Sources. Provide a source for all tables. Symbols. Define all symbols below the table along with abbreviations if any. Use an end dash to denote negative numbers. Text tables. Use either complete sentences or sentence fragments consistently throughout a table. Use bullets for each entry if applicable. Left align text. Indent the second line onwards. Gender references. Use gender neutral language. Avoid using the masculine gender when the gender is not known. Politically correct terms. Eliminate language that could potentially affect sensibilities in terms of religion, race, and the like. For example, the use of the word black. In the States, we do not use the word black anymore. We use the word colored. Non-English terms. Write non-English terms in italics and provide its English translation in parentheses after the word or in a footnote at first appearance. Italicize the non-English term throughout the document. Example, ceteris paribus, meaning all things being equal. Do not italicize local proper nouns. Example, names of agencies, institutions, or organizations. For example, Komisyon sa Wikang Pilipino, Bahay ng Alumni. Numerals or words. Spell out numbers from 1 to 9. Spell out a number used as the first word of a sentence. It is better to reword when a spelled out number will consist of many words. Example, 11 pupils from Taguig Elementary School made it to the final round. About 50,000 high school students took the assessment test. So if the number is quite big, we do not spell it out anymore. Numbers with 4 or more digits should also be in numeral form and separated by commas. Example, 50,000 to 1 million. 1st through 9th are spelled out. 10th onwards should be written on 11th and so on. For example, 21st century, 10th DepEd anniversary. Avoid following the word for a number with a figure in parentheses for the same number. For example, 8, and then followed by the open close parentheses 8, number 8, 10, followed by open close parentheses number 10. So let's avoid this. Use figures for the following. Example, ages, hours, time, money, grade or year levels, statistical data, series of numbers in the same category. Fractions are spelled out and hyphenated. Example, 1/3 of the student population, 1/2 of the learners, so there's a hyphen. Use Roman numerals when indicating the DepEd regions. For example, regions 1 to 12, just use the hyphen instead of the word 2. Regional offices 1 to 12. Negative numbers. Use an n dash to signify negative numbers in texts. In text, write out all negative numbers as numerals preceded by an n dash. When providing a plus or minus range, place the symbol plus or minus before the number without a space. In tables, use an n dash for negative numbers. Very large numbers. Very large numbers in the millions or more should be expressed in the form numeral and spelled out word, especially when they are fractional, except in years, page numbers, and serial numbers. Insert a comma every 3 digits. For example, 25.6 million, 76 billion, 5 trillion. Percent. When used in press releases and speeches, spell out percent rather than in its symbol form percent. If the article uses percent 3 times or more, use the symbol percent rather than the word percent. Use percent in infographics. For issuances, use the spelled out form. Decimals. Write decimals with a period, not a comma. Use a maximum of 2 decimal places unless a reason is specified. In a text, spell out fractions and hyphenate. For example, 1/3 of the student population, 1/2 of the learners. Articles. Use the definite article, quote unquote, the, to restrict or particularize a noun and an indefinite article, like quote unquote a or quote unquote an, when the identity of the noun is not specified or fixed. Nouns used as adjectives. In general, make nouns singular when they are used as adjectives. We have an exception. Retain the s if a phrase sounds unnatural or misleading without it. For example, human resources budget, skills training, schools division memorandum, results framework, training needs assessment. If you omit the s there, it sounds weird, so just retain the s. Punctuation. Under the punctuation, we have the apostrophe. Use an apostrophe to show that one or more letters have been omitted from a word to form a contraction. Limit the use of contractions unless in dialogues or scripts. For example, he'd or he apostrophe d, referring to he would be assigned. It's or it is an assessment. It'll or it will be announced. An apostrophe is also used in place of omitted letters or numbers. For example, class of 80, referring to 1980. Ma'am, referring to Madam. An apostrophe with the letter S is added to the end of the most nouns to indicate the possessive form. This includes the nouns that end in S, whether the S is pronounced or not. For example, for common nouns in plural form ending in S, or proper nouns such as names of countries or organizations, which are plural in form and ending in S, add an apostrophe only. For example, children's hour, Philippines roll. So in the Philippines roll, you do not add another extra S for that. Let's go now to brackets. Brackets are usually used in transcriptions for silent editing. These are also used in transcriptions that have poor recording. In this case, the editor resorts to suggesting words that can complete a statement. Brackets are used to indicate that the editor has added a particular word or rephrased a statement in a transcription. For example, the Philippine eagle, bracket, Phyticophaga jeffreyi, is one of the largest and most majestic birds in the world. Colon. Colons are used to introduce a list of specific items in a sentence. For example, the glove compartment contains 3 items: a torchlight, a pack of batteries, and black trash bag. Example, for more information, contact the focal person, National Festival of Talents, Bureau of Curriculum Development, or Bureau of Learning Delivery, DepEd Central Office, Pasig City, telephone numbers, etc., etc. So we put colons there. It is also used to introduce subtitles. For example, effective oral communication skills and strategies, how to teach confidently, eloquently, and passionately, climate change, colon, understanding, reducing, and adapting. Use a colon after the salutation of a business letter. For example, Your Excellency, colon, Dear Mr. Rosales, colon. Use a colon to formally introduce a question or a quotation. For example, the national scientist explains to the Congress, why is it important to protect the environment? In indicating references in the main text of DepEd Memorandum or DepEd Order, use colon, and in specifying the numbers, use colon before the numbers when the references are more than one. For example, references, colon, DepEd Memorandum number 45, DepEd Memorandum, colon, numbers 63, 68, and 93, series of 2016. Exception: if there is only one reference, there is no need to insert a colon before the number. Comma. A mark of punctuation used to indicate a division in a sentence, as in setting off a word, phrase, or clause to separate items in a list, to mark of thousands in numerals to separate types or levels of information in bibliographic and other data. When enumerating a series of 3 or more elements, separate the elements with commas. For example, the learners, comma, teachers, comma, and the researchers working overnight to meet the deadline. If the last element in a series consists of paired elements joined by a and, place a comma before that element. For example, the author wrote additional lessons, comma, the managing editor proofread the proofs, comma, and the editorial assistant implemented the corrections and coordinated with the layout artists. Commas are not required around junior and senior, and they are never used to set off the second, the third, and the like when these are used as part of a name. In an inverted name, however, as in an index, a comma is required before such an element, which comes last. For example, President Juan de la Cruz II was the predecessor of President Carlo Reyes. Senator Joseph de los Santos Jr. co-authored the bill on the Citizens Act of 20XX, Republic Act 10XXX. President de la Cruz, Juan II. Senator de los Santos, Joseph, Jr. Commas are not required around incorporated, limited, and such as part of a company. Example, the Philippine Professional Linkages from various disciplines incorporated. So we do not see any comma there. We'll conduct the International Seminar on Leadership and Management from August 12 to 14, 2016 at the Baguio Teachers Camp, Baguio City. And dash. An end dash is used to indicate ranges. Example, from 25 to 60 may be written as 25-60. M dash. An M dash is longer than an N dash. May replace commas, parentheses, and colons in parenthetical phrases. They may emphasize a break or an explanatory expression. Do not add spaces before and after an M dash. For example, 3 Filipino heroes, Jose Rizal, Apolinario Mabini, and Andres Bonifacio, M dash, are 3 of the heroes honored in the country. So there are no spaces. Hyphen. Consult Merriam-Webster for hyphenation. So that's one example. Example, 532-6789, 3-B, Baker Street. Use a hyphen in spelled out fractions. For example, 1/4, 5 1/8 inches, 4 quarters. Use a hyphen to connect phrasal adjectives that collectively modify or describe another. For example, poverty-stricken provinces, one-child policy. Use a hyphen to join 2 or more words that form a single thought adjective. For example, self-confident, school-based. Use a hyphen to form new words beginning with the prefixes. Example, self-explanatory, full-time teacher, teacher participant. Use a hyphen to join a number and the unit of measure to form an adjectival phrase. For example, 10-kilometer fun run, 15-year-old student, 70-year-old retiree. Hyphenate adjectival phrases. Example, spelled out syllables, evidence-based policy, up-to-date technology. Do not hyphenate email. Example, he sent out an email to staff. So before we write e-mail. So that's not the right way to write email. Do not hyphenate adverbial adjectives ending in "ly". For example, newly appointed director, newly designated officer in charge. No hyphen. Use square brackets for parenthetical elements within the parentheses. Example, the situation of the barangay, referring to the local government unit LGU, was improving in terms of recovery from COVID-19. Okay, so it's like you want to close parentheses for reference, and then within the parentheses you still want to indicate another reference, or maybe the shorthand. So that's where brackets take place. Let's go now to period. Use a period to mark the end of a declarative or imperative sentence. Example, the K-12 Basic Education Program is a flagship reform program of the Department of Education, open close parentheses, DepEd, in close collaboration with various education sectors, particularly the Commission on Higher Education, close open parentheses, CHED, and the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, close open parentheses, TESDA. Place the period before double or single closing quotation marks. Example, a lawyer describes the regime as a kleptocracy. When parentheses enclose a complete and independent sentence, place the period inside. For example, observe the changes that happened. Open close parentheses. You may use a magnifying lens to see the changes more clearly. So there's a period inside the close open parentheses. If the parentheses enclose a phrase or a word, place the period outside. For example, birds generate much heat from their own metabolism. Open close parentheses, that is the sum of all the chemical changes in the body. So here we can see that the one inside the open close parentheses is not a sentence. So there should be no period inside. Place periods after abbreviations. For example, Mr. and Mrs. Santos. Do not place periods on acronyms. Like we said earlier, acronyms do not contain periods anymore. For example, ECCD for Early Childhood Care and Development, SBM for School-Based Management, no more periods. Place periods after initials. For example, His Excellency Mario M. De Leon. Question mark. Place a question mark at the end of a direct question. Do not use a question mark after an indirect question. For example, how long will it take for humans to reach Jupiter? There's a question mark. Punctuation marks after quoted text should be placed within the quotation marks. Commas that are followed by attributive statements should be placed inside the quotation marks as well. Only colons and semicolons are written outside the quotation marks. Use double quotation marks. For example, the director said, "Please submit the papers to me before close of business tomorrow." So, what the director said was placed inside the quotation marks. Set off direct quotations with quotation marks. Place only the exact quoted words within the quotation marks. The report cited the occurrence as statistically insignificant. Okay, so that's an example. Do not use any punctuation before a quotation introduced by that or which or a similar conjunction. For example, the teacher said that the student will quote-unquote do well in class. The trainer was very good, which made the participants perform quote-unquote exceedingly well. Okay. Semicolon. When the items in a series are complex or involve internal punctuation, separate them with a semicolon. For example, the National Capital Region NCR bagged a total of 95 medals, semicolon, Region 3, 87, semicolon, Region 4-A, 75, semicolon, Caraga, 69, semicolon, Region 10, 58, semicolon, and the Cordillera Administrative Region or CAR, 52. Use a semicolon to join two independent clauses that are not connected with a coordinate conjunction. Example, the President hailed the Supreme Court decision. The senators and the representatives also concurred with it. You have one thought, two different supporting statements that are joined together. Ranges. Use an end dash to connect ranges of numbers for dates, times, page numbers, or reference numbers. For example, he will study in London from 2018 to 2022. So we use the end dash for ranges. References. Cite all quoted or referenced materials or material correctly and completely in a footnote. Publications may follow the rules below or those in Chicago Manual of Style. Books as references. For books, follow this model for format and punctuation. Author, year, title in italics, place of publication, publisher. Page numbers are optional and should appear at the end of the footnote. For ranges of page numbers, use an end dash. For example, PP period 11 to 35. So here, I think those of you who do research works, this will be very useful to you. Government publications as references. Example, Government of the Philippines, 2010, Philippine Statistics, Series number 13, Manila. Example, Government of the Philippines, Department of Education, 2011, Education for Development, Manila. Periodicals. Examples, author, year, title of article, journal or newspaper title in italics, volume number or issue number. Author, year, title of article, journal or newspaper title in italics, volume number, issue number, page number if the page number is specified. Others, for example, W.M. Santos 2015, Research into the Environment Research Journal, 16, open close parenthesis 5, referring maybe to the volume and the series number of the publication, and then the page 100 to 219. Another example, Mercado 2017, International Development Institutions, background paper for the Education Development Forum, Greece, 18 to 27 of April. Online and electronic sources. Cite quoted or referenced materials from an electronic source correctly and as completely as possible in a footnote. Tip: use Shift-Enter to break URLs without breaking the link. Do not add a period after a URL. For example, Department of Education, period, http://www.deped.gov.ph/. So do not add a period at the end of the ph/. In-text citation. Use the following format for in-text citation, which is the author and the year. Example, according to a recent survey, De La Cruz, 2011, young students with adequate nutrition perform better in school. So that's how it's written. Spelling. Use American spelling. Consult Merriam-Webster, www.m-w.com for correct spellings if unsure. Because if you are in British English, the word utilize will use letter Z. The British English will use letter S. So sometimes that's confusing. So to be sure, just check the Merriam-Webster. For Filipino words, use the UP Diksionaryong Filipino Binagong Edisyon 2010 or Diksionaryong Filipino Komisyon ng Wikang Filipino. American English is to be used consistently for all documents, including issuances. The following are a few examples of the difference between the two. So here we have the US and the UK spelling. The US use the Z and the British use the S. Like organize, organizing, organization. Also the or and the R for neighbor, labor, humor, behavior, color, favor, honor. The same sounding words but differently spelled. So US preferred LED versus double LED, and LING versus double LING. Like modeled, enrolled, traveled. ER versus RE. For example, US center, British center, meter, theater. So the same sounding words but differently spread out. Acknowledgement. There is an additional E there for the British spelling. Aging, catalog, counselor, dialogue, inquiry. So many differences in spelling. So to be sure, please kindly check the link for Merriam-Webster given earlier. The spelling of proper nouns are retained. Example, Organization for Economics, Cooperation, and Development, with the S there. If it refers to the particular organization, you cannot respell it and Americanize the spelling because it's a name, a particular specified name. Words that have the same singular and plural forms. So singular, evidence. Plural is pieces of evidence. News, series. Some words do not change even when they are in plural forms. So here are the spelling mistakes that we need to avoid and spelling preferences that we can choose. Instead of saying adult learner, use adult learners. Audiovisual without hyphen. Co-chair without hyphen. Co-curricular, instead of separating, combine and put a hyphen. Copy editing, use it as one word, copy editing. Co-sponsor, one word. Cost effective, Cost effective with hyphen. Education related with hyphen. Extracurricular one word. In-service training with hyphen. Interagency as one word. Learner-centered with hyphen. Midterm as one word. Mother tongue as separate words. Multilingual as one word. Multimedia as one word. Non-academic as separated with a dash. Excuse the A there that's missing. Okay. Non-DepEd with hyphen. Non-formal as one word. Non-government as one word. Non-partisan one word. Non-possessive one word without hyphen. Non-print one word. Non-teaching one word. Non-working one word. Officer in charge with hyphen. Online as one word. Open-ended question with 2 hyphens. School children one word. School uniform separate words. School-based separate with a hyphen. School building 2 words. Student participants separated with a hyphen. Student teacher separated with a hyphen. Teacher participants separated with a hyphen. Test taker separated with a hyphen. Time on task separated with a hyphen. Trainers separated trainers instead of trainers. Up to date separated with 2 hyphens. Mag-aaral separated with a hyphen. Let's go now to the proofreader's marks. So these are the proofreader's marks. I personally, as the Division Information Officer, encounter these marks whenever our memorandum in the social mobilization and networking section is being corrected by the boss. By bosses, I mean Chief Rapis, Sir Mac. So here are the operational signs. When you encounter this one, this means delete. This one, it means close up deletes or delete the space. No space, okay? This one, delete and close up, use only when deleting letters within a word. Okay, so estet meaning let it stand or retain. This one refers to insert space. Ital meaning italic type. Rom meaning Roman type. BF meaning boldface. LC meaning lowercase. And caps meaning set in capital letters. Operational signs: make space between words equal. So you have the EQ there. Make space between lines equal. Insert hair space. So this one. Okay. LS meaning letter space. This symbol refers to begin new paragraph. This symbol indent type 1 N from left or right. This move right. We have a typographical signs also here. So SC is set in small capitals. WF wrong font set in correct type. X meaning check type image or remove blemish. You have here the V. Okay, so insert here or make superscript. Here, insert here or make subscript. Then you have the functional marks. So this one is move left. The other one earlier is move right. And then you have center, move up, move down. FL for flush left, FR flush right. This one insert comma. And then insert apostrophe or single quotation mark. Insert quotation marks. Here, insert period. Then set, insert question mark. Additional operational signs. Straighten type, align horizontally. This one, align vertically. TR, for transpose, spell out for SP. For example, you have the SBN there, no? And then the operational sign SP was placed there. It means you have to spell out. You write school-based management. Okay. Insert semicolon, insert hyphen, insert n dash, insert m dash, insert n dash, insert parentheses for this one, and this one is insert colon. Let's go now to gender neutral language. So instead of using the word businessman or business woman, we prepare persons engaged in business or business person. Instead of using the word chairman, use the word chair or chairperson. Instead of congressman, use the word member of Congress or representative. Fireman, use the word firefighter. Fisherman, use the word fisherfolk. Girl, boy, man, woman, use the word person or human. Ladies and gentlemen, use the word distinguished guest, honored guests. Landlord, landlady, use proprietor, owner. Layman, layperson, and specialist, generalist. Mailman, letter carrier. So avoid male nurse, just use the word nurse. Instead of man, humanity, man hours, person hours. Man-made, manufactured. So manpower, use the word staff, human resources instead. Policeman, policewoman, use instead officer, police official. Stewardess, steward, use the address flight attendant instead. Two-man, to operate. Waiter, waitress, just use the word server. Workman, just use the word worker. And then instead of using the word blind, just use the word visually impaired. Cripple, invalid, just state instead person with disability, person with health conditions. Deaf, use instead hearing impaired. Disabled, handicap, instead say person with disability, person with health conditions. Retarded, say instead person with mental health conditions or condition. Do not use accordingly, consequently, approximately, currently, furthermore. So these words we try to avoid. If we could only if you could say instead therefore so, for approximately, about, for currently, now, furthermore, also. Okay. The goal there is to simplify the thought or the information being delivered. Do not use the following, like above mentioned, or aforesaid, aforementioned, aforecited. Subject, caption, such, same, said, same, such, foregoing, for the above reason, below, relative to. So these are the old style. We do not use this anymore. We stick to this. The said individual, use pronouns or its antecedent, this reason, this, about. So simplified. Also, the hereafter, the hereof, hereto, herewith, herein, hereby, wherein, whereby, whereof. The latter, the former, the writer, the undersigned, personally, following, as follows. So these are the old style of writing and communication. We prefer this one. From now on, in which, I, me. Okay. So if we could omit, we omit. Okay, so another is replace Legolas with more direct expression. So instead of saying in the event that, say if, when, or in case. In view of the above, say instead consequently or as a result. In lieu of, just say instead of. Hold in abeyance, just say postpone. Pursuant to, just say following. In conformance with, just say conforming to. In compliance with, just say complying with. Interpose on objection, just say object. Interpose no objection, just say agree or agree with. Is predicated on the assumption that, just say assumes. In red, the articles mentioned, just say regarding the articles. To wit, just say namely. So this is more simple. Parts of words often confused. So advise, inform. So the difference between the two, advise is to recommend a course of action, often with of. To inform, impart knowledge, especially with occurrence of facts. Use and utilize. So what's the difference? Use, to avail oneself of a thing as a means or instrument to one's end. Utilize, to turn to profitable account. Suggest the discovery of a profitable use of employment for a practical purpose. So I think utilize here has a connotation of profit. Use is more on the instrument. Comprise and constitute. So comprise means to embrace or include. For example, a zoo comprises mammals, reptiles, and birds. Constitute, to make up as the constituent elements or elements. So for example, animals constitute a zoo. There is a difference between the two. Transpire and happen. So between transpire and happen, transpire means to exhale, moisture, vapor, perfume, etc. To perspire, to leak out, come to light, become known. For example, eventually grim account of his villainy transpired. This is not to be used in the sense of happen or come to pass. Acceptable only when its primary implication is a leaking out or becoming known. For example, what the chief said never transpired or never came out. But the word happen means to occur by chance or to come to pass. Another is the imply and infer. Imply, to express indirectly. Infer, to arrive at after reasoning from evidence or from premises. Allude and refer. Allude means to mention indirectly. Refer means to mention more specifically. How about insure, and assure? Insure, to make certain of. For example, one more vote will ensure the victory. Insure, to denote the act of issuing insurance. For example, we must insure our fleet of trucks. Assure, to make one sure or certain by removing all doubt or suspense. For example, I assure you that is true. How about lay and lie? So lay is a transitive verb, the principal parts of which lay, laid are followed by a direct object to set down. For example, I always lay the mail on the desk. Lie, on the other hand, is an intransitive verb, the principal parts of which lie, lay, lain are followed by direct object to recline. For example, the towns lie on the banks of the river. How about raise and rise? So raise is a transitive verb and rise is an intransitive verb. Raise is the principal parts of which raise, raised are followed by direct object. For example, I will raise this issue at our next board meeting. Rise is the principal part of which rise, rose, risen are never followed by direct object. For example, stock market prices will surely rise this week. How about adapt and adopt? So adapt means to fit, to suit, or to adjust. Adopt, to take and apply or put into practice as one's own. So let's go now to eliminating redundancy. Avoid using a phrase when a word will do. Each redundant phrase below can be reduced to a single word without loss in meaning. So what we can see here is a simplification or simplify things. No, instead of saying along the lines of, just say like. As a consequence, just say consequently. At this point in time, just say now. In the near future, just use soon. At an early date, just say soon. At a later date, just say later. Under date of, just use dated. At all times, just use always. In our circumstances or cases, just use always. Because of the fact that, cross that out and just use because. Reason is because, just use because. Whether or not, just use whether. The question as to whether, just use whether. In order to, for the purpose of, for the reason that, for this reason, therefore. In terms of in. In the majority of instances, just say often or usually. In some circumstances, let's use sometimes. In number of cases, sometimes. The majority of, use instead most. A large number of, just say many. Many in number, just say many. Few in number, just say few. Preparatory to, just say before. Prior to, just say before. Subsequent to, use after. By means of, just say by. In the neighborhood of, just say about. In close proximity, just say near. In regard to, regarding, about. With regard to, regarding, about. With reference to, just use about. Concerning the matter of, just use about. Take the place of, use substitute. Cause the sum of, just say some. Feel free to, just say please. In as much as, just use as or since. With the exception of, just use except. Until such time that, just use until. In the event that, just use if. Provided that, if. Due to the fact that, use due instead. Despite the fact that, just use despite. In spite of the fact that, just use although. We ask you to, just say please. Of a confidential nature, just use confidential. Small in size, just use small. Field of economics, just use economics. At a rapid rate, just say rapidly. In a satisfactory manner, just say satisfactorily. On a personal basis, just use personally. In the same way, just use similarly. Let's go now to official issuances. DepEd issuances are official documents containing policies, procedures, or information released and signed by the Secretary or other authorized officials. The DepEd issuances, like the DepEd order, DepEd memorandum, Unnumbered Memorandum, Office Order, Office Memorandum, and Advisory vary in their content, effect, duration, and activity. Let's go now to the DepEd order, or DO. This contains policies promulgated by the central office which are generally or permanent in nature. It is signed by the Secretary as the alter ego of the President. It is nationwide in scope and is usually long-term in nature unless rescinded or amended by another DepEd order. It has 16 elements as follows: the letterhead, the official date, the control number, the title of the DO, the concerned officials, the statement of the policy, objectives of issuing the policy, statement on repealing, rescinding, or modifying previous provisions contained in the previously approved DepEd order, statement of publication and effectivity, closing statement for strict compliance of all concerned to the stated policy, issuing authority with signature affixed to DepEd order, statement of enclosure, related and repealed previous issuances used as references. Classification in Perpetual Index for easy reference and research, and tracer including the initial name of encoder, file name of DepEd order, assigned tracking number, and date reformatted. Lastly, footer including the address of the department, contact numbers, and website address. So we have here the sample of the DepEd order. So one, this is the letterhead, which includes the DepEd official seal together with the agency name in Old English text empty. Then you have two spaces, and then you have the date. And then after the date, you have the issuance number. After the issuance number, one space, then the title of the DepEd order, and another one space, then the concerned officials, another one space, then the content, another one space. Number 7, let's check. 7 is the objectives of issuing the policy. Okay. Number 8 is the repealing issue. And number 9 is the statement of publication and effectivity. Okay. Number 10, so this is the closing statement for strict compliance of all concerned to the stated policy. And number 11 is the issuing official or signatory for the DepEd order. Then you have two spaces there, and then the 12 is the statement of enclosure, and 13 there is the related and repealed previous issuances used as references. Okay, 14, you have one space, and then 14, the Perpetual Index. Then 1 to 2 spaces, the encoder. Okay, the address of the encoder. And then 16 is the 15 there is the tracer, and then 16 is the footer, which includes the address of the department, contact numbers, and website address. Okay, let's go now to the DepEd memorandum. So DepEd memorandum disseminate instructions, information, or related matters, including creation of committees or task force, submission of list of reports, announcement of celebrations, surveys, holidays, examinations, contests or results thereof, and conference or seminars conducted by the Bureau, centers, services, units, and divisions, and reiteration of regulations or laws issued by other agencies and departments. Many provide for detailed procedures to implement established laws or policies of the DepEd or government agencies. It is signed by the Secretary if it is DepEd-wide in scope, or delegated to the Undersecretary of each strand for limited application or specific in application only. The 17 elements of a DepEd memorandum are the following. Letterhead includes the DepEd official seal together with the agency name in Old English text empty. Official date assigned upon the receipt of approved DepEd memorandum. Control number with the series of year approved and disseminated. Title of the DepEd memorandum, concerned officials, policy proponent, and implementers and stakeholders. Statement of the activity, objectives of issuing the activity, statement of enclosure in support of the activity, target participants, contact details of originator, closing statement for dissemination of this memorandum through DepEd website, issuing authority with signature affixed to DepEd memorandum, and statement of closure. Related and repealed previous issuances used as references if there is any. Classification in Perpetual Index for easy reference and research. And tracer including the initial name of encoder, file name of DepEd memorandum, assigned tracking number, and date reformatted. Footer including the address of the department, contact number, and website address. Almost the same as DepEd order. So here we have the sample DepEd memorandum. You have the letterhead, you have the date, the issuance number, the title of the DepEd memorandum, the concerned officers, stakeholders, recipients. Okay, number 6 is, let's just review, statement of the activity. Number 7 is the objective of the DepEd memorandum. Number 8 is the statement of inclusion in support of the activity. Number 9 is the target participants. Number 10 is the contact details of originator. Okay. 11 is the closing statement. 12 is the issuing authority. 13 is the statement of enclosure. 14 is the related and repealed previous issuances used as references. 15 is the classification of perpetual index. 16, tracer or of the encoder. That's 16. 17 is the footnote indicating the address, the telephone number and the website address of the department. Let's go now to the unnumbered memorandum. The unnumbered memorandum is similar to DepEd memorandum. The unnumbered memorandum is limited only to regions or officers. It is limited in scope. The 12 elements of unnumbered memorandum are the following. The letterhead includes the DepEd official seal together with the agency name in all the English text empty, official date, concerned officials, policy proponent and implementers and stakeholders, title of the unnumbered memorandum, statement of the activity, objectives of issuing the activity, target participants, contact details of originator, closing statement for dissemination of this memorandum, issuing authority with the signature affixed to unnumbered memorandum, tracer including the initial name of encoder, file name of unnumbered memorandum, assigned tracking number and date reformatted, and footer including the address of the department, contact numbers, and website address. So here we have the sample unnumbered memorandum. You have the letterhead, the date, then you have the issuance number. Issuance number or no issuance number there. Okay. So just the title of the unnumbered memorandum and the statement of the activity. You have the statement of the activity, the objectives of the issuing the activity. Then you have number 7, target participants. Number 8, contact details of originator. Okay, number 9 is closing statement for dissemination. 10 is issuing authority with the signature affixed. So no perpetual index, no. Instead, number 11 is the tracer of the encoder. And number 12, the footnote, which indicates the address, phone number, and website of the department. What about official orders or the OO? It contains operational guidelines, rules, and procedures on matters of internal administration of the department's bureau, centers, units, or offices. Its concerns are usually limited to a bureau or unit in the central office. Hence, it only applies to limited officials and staff in the central office. It is usually short-term, temporary in application. So maybe this will not be our concern. But this has 9 elements also. Let's not discuss that. Let's go to Office Memorandum or the OM. Disseminates instructions or information on officials, personnel, and staff from the central office. It is signed by the secretary or the concerned undersecretary, assistant secretaries, heads of bureaus, services, or offices. Its concerns are limited to a bureau or unit in the central office, hence it only applies to limited officials and staff in the central office. It is usually short-term, temporary in application. So let's not discuss this, although it has 11 elements. Okay, and almost similar content. DepEd advisory. DepEd advisory emanates from DepEd organizations and agencies to announce programs or activities, scholarships, training, opportunities for supervisors, school heads, and teachers and learners. They attend such activities on a voluntary basis, hence, traveling expenses and registration fee are charged to personal account. Its concerns may be DepEd-wide or may be specific in application. It is usually short-term or temporary in application. This is issued in accordance with the procedures of DepEd Order No. 8, Series of 2013, entitled Policy Guidelines on Regulating the Issuance of DepEd Advisories. So the DepEd advisory has 9 elements, the letterhead including the following: control number with a series of year, approved and disseminated, official date in compliance with DepEd Order No. 8, Series of 2013, purpose of issuance of advisory and DepEd website, title of the DepEd advisory, statement of the activity. Number 4, objectives of issuing the activity, additional information of the said activity, target participants, DepEd Order No. 9, Series of 2005 Policy and Section 3 of Republic Act No. 5546, contact details of originator and tracer, including the initial name of encoder, file name of DepEd advisory, assigned tracking number, and date drafted. So we have the sample here. It's quite different from the previous issuances. No, you do not have the letterhead, but instead you have the control number, the official date, the compliance to DepEd Order No. 8, purpose of issuance, and the DepEd website. Okay. And then the title, number 3 is the statement of the activity. Then you have number 4. Number 4 is the objectives of issuing the activity. Number number 6 and 7 and 8. These are the target participants, DepEd Order No. 9, contact details of originator and tracer. Okay. That's it for the advisory. We have example 2. So almost looking the same, no? Here we have a sample of 2015 SM Green Film Festival GFF project. So the advisory is on personal expense basis. Okay. Let's go now to referencing style. References cited from the main text of a typical DepEd issuance are either DepEd orders or memorandum with number and year series that they were issued. If the DepEd order or DepEd memorandum was cited in the main text, the number and the year series should be in parentheses. Example, DepEd order. So, open close parentheses, number 1 series of 2020. DepEd memorandum, open close parentheses, number 1 series of 2020. If references are more than one, this should be written as follows. So, DepEd order numbers 13 and 19 series of 2020, or DepEd memorandum number 16 and 19 series of 2020. Perpetual Index to Regulations. The Perpetual Index is a document containing the list of subjects appropriate to each department regulation issuance. This is used as a guide for easy research and quick reference to the department regulations issuances. The Perpetual Index is prepared through indexing the approved department regulation or issuance by subject. The subjects are arranged alphabetically and the regulations chronologically. So when we say alphabetically, by alphabetical order. Pag chronological, by date. This is one of the elements of a department order and memorandum. It is found at the lower left-hand corner of the main text, including the reference of the DepEd order or DepEd memorandum. This is a source for checking whether the approved department regulation or issuance are amended or rescinded. The Perpetual Index covers the DepEd orders and DepEd memorandums from 1975 to present. At the end of the year, this is prepared in a bound copy and is available at the Public Assistance Public Assistance Service, PD, for research purposes. Citing enclosure. Cite all enclosures in the main text and number these in the order which they are cited. For a single enclosure, state enclosure to DepEd order memorandum rather than enclosure number 1. For annexes, label this with numbers. Example, enclosure number 1 to DepEd order number 2 series of 2013. Enclosure number 1 to DepEd memorandum number 63 series of 2015. Citing reference. Citing references in the main text, previous issuances related to the issuance, whether DepEd order, DepEd memorandum, with the number and the year it was issued. If the DepEd order or DepEd memorandum are cited in the main text, the number and the year issued should be written in parentheses. If more than one reference, it should be written with a colon. So we have your example here, DepEd order, open close parenthesis number 1 series of 2016, DepEd memorandum, open close parenthesis number 1 series of 2016. If more than one reference, these should be written as follows. Example, DepEd order, open close parenthesis numbers 13 and 19 series of 2008. Indicating subjects for research purposes. So indicate subjects under Perpetual Index related to the issuance or issuances for research purposes. Assigning tracking number. Accurate recording and knowledge of the whereabouts of all requests for DepEd issuances is important so that these can be located quickly and efficiently. Assigning tracking number to each request and issuance upon receipt is essential. This will help track documents of request and issuances. Tracking number starts at 001. So here in the division office, this is being delegated to the receiving and releasing section. They are the ones that track the DepEd issuances. Indicating tracer. The tracer is an indicated at the last part of each issuance. It is composed of the initial or name of the assigned encoder, file name and tracking number followed by the date it was drafted or reformatted by the publication division. The title of the issuance is also indicated as file name. That ends my topic on the DepEd Manual of Style. Thank you for listening. Have a good day ahead.